Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen of the Heavy Metal History Podcast, yes, Mr. Matt McGachy of Cryptopsy and Vox and Hops, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, how you doing, Dustin? I'm very, very happy to be here. What a pleasure it is. I love that we're hanging out. Thanks to one of our mutual friends, I got the lucky chance to hang out with the wonderful Fred from Carnifex for a month, a little bit over a month back in October. It's already
Nice.
been it's going to be like a month, I think, that I'm home tomorrow, which is just baffling when that happens. It's like I've been away, I've been home just about the same amount of time that I was away, but I got to spend a lot of time with Fred. We had a blast on that tour. It was a awesome, awesome experience. And he said you should hang out with my friend Dustin and do the podcast. So here we are.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I try not to bother Fred about it too much, but every time somebody, I'm like, hey, can you like reach out and see if they're cool with doing this and, put the feelers out for me? And he's always like, yeah, man, no problem. It's like,
Because
sweet.
Fred's freaking awesome. I can swear on my podcast. Can I swear on your podcast?
Absolutely. You can swear on this
Fred is
podcast.
fucking awesome. It's
Yeah.
Vox and Hops, I see you crack something. At Vox and Hops, I typically hang out with my metal friends talking about their lives and music while sharing
Yeah.
craft beers. What do you got? What did you just crack there?
Yeah, Fred told me, I mean, I've seen a bunch of your episodes, but yeah, Fred told me to be prepared. Nothing crazy. It is a kombucha beer.
Nice. Ooh, kombucha beer. So that was almost a thing here
Yeah.
in Quebec
It's
about 3 years ago. I
it's
interviewed
pretty
some dude
stout.
that had like
It's like an eight.
brewed 8%. Yeah, those are scary. And I remember like cracking it here, like right off camera, and it was just like geysering, just all over the place. And I was like grabbing pieces of paper here, just trying to sop up as much as this kombucha beer that just exploded everywhere. So that one seemed a bit more stable than my friend's beer, the kombucha beer that he made. I won't say what brewery he's from because they probably don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, kombucha very volatile. Even stuff, if it shakes even just a little bit, you're gonna have a geyser on your hands and then you're just soaked in it and you smell kind of like alcohol.
Which we tend to do. On my side, I'm drinking something friendly, something from the grocery store, but it's a good grocery store beer. It's from Le Relais Boreal, which is basically the craft division of Boreal, which is one of the biggest breweries here in Quebec. They're sort of craft, but they're very macro.
Okay.
It's just the sheer volume of beer that they put out, and they put out these. They opened up like a playpen for their head brewer called Gab, who's just awesome. Gab Zulon is his name. He basically reinvented the craft beer game here in Quebec about 5 to 7 years ago. I can't quite remember at this point.
Okay.
He brought hazy IPAs to Quebec stably, like more frequently. Back in the day in Quebec, we used to have to drive down to Vermont to get any sort of haze. Going to Foam, going to Burlington Beer Co., going to other places such as that, The Alchemist. And then he brought it here with the Boreal Zinal, I guess, which is funny because I have that beer right here. But this is their double cold IPA. It's a new one that they've dropped, and Gab gets to make small batch beer and have fun because a lot of brewers, once a brewery is no longer a microbrewery and becomes a macrobrewery, they can't take chances on weird products that aren't going to sell because the amount that's invested into each batch of beer is just so big that they have to make sure bets, which is what they do with the Nord and everything else that
Yeah.
they do. But Le Relais, this tiny little place, there's one in Saint Jerome, which is where Boreal's main establishment is, but they opened one in Montreal, which is where Gab has his like playpen, this like brand new facility. It's beautiful. It's where I hosted my Hayes Wars competition back in August, and shout out to Gab. He's awesome, and I like this one. So it's basically a double IPA that has been lagered, so it has it's much more smooth. It's basically like a brute IPA, a lagered IPA, but a big boy, 8%.
Yeah, that was always my problem with IPAs, man. The just the flavor on them was a little not for my palate.
Too juicy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was trying to
This
get
one,
something a little more local, but I wasn't able to in time. Kind
oh,
of
that's
this
okay.
is
We're just
fine.
hanging out. Cheers
Yeah.
to you.
Cheers, buddy.
Mm. It's smooth, it's dry. The juice is still there. The hops on this one, I can't remember. If I had to guess, it's something juicy. Citra. They're classic hops, actually. Citra and Mosaic.
I was gonna say when I toured Canada with Carnifex, we didn't go to any like microbreweries, but we did get introduced to something I guess only there, and it was a Molson Dry. Gross,
Oh yeah, nasty. That's one a lot of
disgusting.
Quebec people's or Canadian people's first beers, the Molson High Dry. Just nasty, high ABV. It's an efficient beer, something
Yeah, it
that is
was.
cheap and that will nastily fuck you up really fast, and then the next day you'll most probably have a headache and not feel well.
Yeah,
Definitely enjoyed a few of those in my
I think
life.
we drank one bottle each, and we were good for the
The big
night
ones,
at that.
the
Oh,
40s. Yeah, that's the
sure.
danger stuff. Talk to me about that tour. When was that and what were you doing? And
So we did. Let's see, it was the Montreal Assault,
oh,
Despise
this is
back
old
in.
school. Yeah,
Oh yeah, like 2009, I think. It was a while ago.
that's amazing. And you were playing with Carnifex.
I was just working for them, doing their merch and
Okay,
stuff like
cool.
that. Yeah, crew
Amazing.
work. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they spoke very highly and had fond memories of that tour. There's like this special link between deathcore from Montreal and Carnifex is the vibe that I got.
yep.
Fred mentioned it, and Scott mentioned it a bunch. And when we played Montreal, a lot of the Despised crew were there. Elliot was there from Beneath the Massacre, who I hadn't seen, and Dennis as well, who I
Oh,
hadn't
nice.
seen for years. So it was a nice little reunion. I was there with my kids, and they were running around like crazy people. So I just like popped in and popped out, but I didn't get to see all of them. So shout out to them if they're watching to this, and if they're watching this, and I definitely want to hang out with them again.
Yeah, I miss those guys. I had Chris on in like the early days of the podcast, and it was like right like, or I guess it was a little bit longer. They were working on new stuff after being on hiatus for a long time, and he was like, "Hey man, you want to hear a track?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it's on my phone." And he plays like this garbled track over his phone on the podcast, and I was like, "Cool. I hope somebody figures out what that sounds like because I can't."
I don't know if he understands what happens half the time.
Yeah, they were so fun to tour with, man. Elliot, he's one of the funniest dudes ever. In my opinion, he
Oh
was
hell
he
yeah,
was
we
such a
toured Europe
blast.
together, and he's insane when he's all in.
Yeah. So Matt, one thing I always like to ask on my podcast, at the very least, to kind of get a sense of everything. Tell me a little bit about your personal head, like those bands and records that you remember getting that kind of like shaped your passion into the genre and how it kind of evolved over time.
Hell yes. I stumbled into death metal, into extreme metal. I grew up in the 90s. I was in high school in the 90s. I was enamored and extremely afraid of Marilyn Manson.
Mhm.
And it was something that really piqued my interest. It's something that I wanted more of. I didn't quite understand him, the whole lore that you would get back then of the ribs of all the weird shit, especially on that album. What was it? Smells Like Children. The one with like Dope Hat on it. And it was after A Portrait of American Family and
Okay.
before Antichrist Superstar. There was all these weird like noise tracks between songs. Uh, and it was just I guess it was one that had Sweet Dreams on it.
Hmm.
Is that record?
Yeah.
Smells Like Children. Smells like something like that. I think it smells
My
like children.
only experience with Manson is Christ in Hollywood, and after that, I kind of
Yeah.
like dropped off.
Oh hell
So
yeah. But Hollywood was the
I'm not
last one that
sure.
I stopped. But
Yeah.
I was enamored, and I never saw him when he came through Montreal until I was much older. But that piqued my interest, and then after that, I was very lucky that there's always this guy right in your high school circle. His name is Vince Berardinucci. I'm still friends with him to this day, and he was the guy that would show up with these bands. So he showed up with Korn, he showed up with Limp Bizkit, he showed up with Slipknot about a week before they came to Montreal. With
Oh,
Cold Chamber headlining, Machine Head, and Slipknot opening, we all got tickets and we went and saw that show. Once again, I was a very shy, timid child, and I was terrified in the pit, which I should have been. Obviously, it was an extremely violent pit because that show and anyone that I've spoken to on my podcast about this tour and the lore around this tour about how Slipknot was just eating everyone alive in every city. And that was definitely the case in Montreal. And I had only just seen like the booklet and never seen like any other press pictures of Slipknot. So they came out onto stage, all nine of them, which is crazy on
Yeah.
top of everything else with the masks. And it was this whole thing, right, in the 90s about being spooky and the it's a totally different game than now,
Yep.
where everything is out there. A lot of the stars of today who are as big as Slipknot was back then. Now, like let's say Lorna Shore, Will Ramos, Alex Terrible, is they are people, they're social media stars, and they put all of that out in the world. So if you're going to see Lorna Shore for the first time, you're extremely well acquainted with the social media personality that you're going to see. I'm just imagining being a 15-year-old kid and going to see Lorna for the first time. You already know Will Ramos. You
Yeah.
know what he wants you to know about him, at least. Back in the day, there was nothing. You had to dig, and it was ear of mouth, word of mouth, and just discovering stuff. So it blew my mind. That was it. And then I was a new metal child, and I ate it all up. At I liked clean vocals a lot too. I always wanted to be a
Yeah.
singer. Um, my dad got me into Steve Perry at a young age and Boston. And the thing that the singer that I fell in love with early on was Maynard from Tool. That was someone that I loved. Um, Brandon Boyd from Incubus. I think
Oh,
Incubus in
nice.
that whole science area was just
Yeah.
so. I was in this rabbit hole of YouTube last night, going to bed way too late, watching the original basis of Incubus talk about his riffs. And I was a huge Incubus fan, and they sort of fell off when they got too poppy, but that's okay. And then I just kept getting
Happens.
heavier and heavier. I started joining bands. I was definitely in a new metal band. We definitely had a DJ, and we definitely covered Incubus and Linkin Park. And then I joined another band in Montreal. Shout out to Mike Marino, who found me and brought me into the Montreal metal scene back in 2002. And he was like, yeah, we're gonna sound like Incubus and Taproot, but he did not want to make a band like that. He just wanted to have me in his band. So he sweet talked me to join his band, saying that I was going to be like Seven Dust. I love Seven Dust too. Incubus, and I was going to be able to sing and do like a little bit of harsh vocals. Luckily for him, at that time, I had fallen in through Vince Barnucci again, Mr. Bungle, and Mike
Oh, hell
Patton's
yeah.
Universe, and it was like LimeWire was a thing.
Yep.
So I was just downloading all of Mike Patton's stuff, and I had it all on one CD, but mixed up. It wasn't like by album or by band. It was just so it'd be like Faith No More, Phantomas, Tomahawk, just going all over the place. And this guy's like versatility vocally just blew my mind. So when I went to the first band practice with what became Three Mile Scream, I started doing weird noises, which became screaming. And then that developed into me buying Cannibal Corpse's Kill. I don't know why I bought that CD. I just did. There's something about the album cover, which is funny because it's their most subdued
Right.
album
Right.
cover. Now that I know, it's
So
like
strange.
that pulled me in more than the weird fucked up shit. And then George's delivery just blew my mind how articulated he was, how he could like articulate so well while being so brutal. And then it grew. It just kept going, and it just I kept getting more and more heavy. And then I fell into Cryptopsy because they wanted a clean vocalist that could do harsh vocals, and then I was really trapped, and I had to become a good death metal vocalist. Took many years. I feel around 2017 is when I felt comfortable finally, maybe even later. I'm having fun now as a death metal vocalist. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the thing is you do this long enough, you kind of find your own rhythm and style of like what works with you
Mhm.
and what works with the band and kind of like that middle ground,
It's
man.
yeah, it's definitely tough in the Cryptopsy legacy aspect because so many people revere Lord Worm and None So Vile and
Right.
Blasphemous Flesh. And then there's another era of people that revere Mike DeSalvo with the more machine gun fired, hardcore-esque, brutal stuff. So I really had like two massive shadows that I was standing in, trying to find my own sound, but also staying true to what makes Cryptopsy Cryptopsy. It was extremely difficult. It took me many, many, many years, but luckily the band was always very behind me. There was a lot of lineup changes, obviously, but Flo was always really,
Sure.
really behind me. Chris Donaldson was always really behind me or pushing me to be better, is what I would say from Chris's aspect. Flo's always been behind me, but Chris has always pushed me to be better because he knew that I could do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they wouldn't have brought you on if they didn't think that, you know. It's it's really funny because like when I was like search for knowing that you were coming on and stuff, I went to your first record where you joined the band, and it's really funny to me. I don't read a lot of record reviews and stuff. Like if I like something, I just like it. So I was kind of looking through it seems like the record reviews are like very middling to like I won't say negative because they
Oh, they
weren't
hated
really
me.
negative, but they were just like not. But I went back and I listened. I was like, what are reviews talking about? Like this record's like it's different, but if you look at that logical progression from that record onward, like it still sounds like a Cryptopsy album to me, man.
I don't know. I disagree with that.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a, me and Chris, Flo would stand behind the record because he has no choice because of the stance that he took when we dropped the record. I was not a Cryptopsy fan when I joined the band. I
Uh-huh.
knew of them because they're a popular band from Montreal, which is where I'm from. I was not a death metal head. I was just in a metalcore band, and I was like, this is going to be good for 3 Mile Scream. We're going to become well known because I'm going to be the singer of Cryptopsy, and that backfired horribly. So I think, and I listened to it again probably a year ago for the first time in many, many, many years. And there's some tracks that are cool. The band was all over the place. Like there was no leader. For many,
Okay.
many years, John Levasseur was at the helm of Cryptopsy. Him and Flo were fighting to make Cryptopsy what it was. They're challenging each other.
Yeah.
And then he was gone. He left during Once Was Not. All these uber Cryptopsy fans are like, no, he didn't. He left, but I know. He left halfway through Not Once Was Not. So he had some writing on that. But
Hmm.
The Unspoken King was the first record where he was not there at all. And there was way too many cooks in the kitchen. Everyone wanted to express themselves. And sometimes it's best that you don't. Or
Interesting.
sometimes it's best to have someone in the room that's like, no, that's not good for the brand. Had we released The Unspoken King as a side project called The Unspoken King, it would have worked. People would have given it more leniency. It
Yeah.
would have been okay, acceptable. But the fact that we dropped it and then it leaked a week before it came out, or 2 weeks before it came out, the major clean vocal tracks leaked and people were
Oh.
freaking out. And then us being very naive and immature, and especially not having I don't even know who our publicist was at this time. Whoever our publicist was at this time at Century Media that didn't tell us to stop what we were doing should be fired.
Oh. Oh.
Because
Is that it was that bad?
well, we dropped, we were we were pissed and egotistical, I guess. We put out this track called It's Dinner Time, and we opened
Mhm.
Summer Slaughter with this sample of us. It was me, actually. It was me in the studio pretending to do all these voices, being
Okay.
like a person in their basement saying, "Oh, Cryptopsy sucks," blah blah blah. And I was doing like a really like simple-esque voice, and then basically mocking all these people that were making fun of us on the internet or stating their opinion about us on the internet and stating that they all live with their mothers and have no lives.
Okay.
It was funny, but it
I
wasn't the
mean,
right thing to do.
honestly, I think a little pushback every now and then is warranted, especially because people even sit behind their keyboards and just
They
like,
do, they do. But we were getting death threats. We were getting nasty shit.
wow.
So
So
so we just
changed. I mean,
retaliated. We shouldn't. It was like a knee-jerk thing, but I wish that there was like a publicist. I know that now we're on Season to Miss, and I know that if we were to pull shit like that now, I
yeah.
would get a phone call from Will, and Will would be like, Matt, what the fuck you doing? Take it down. Because we put it on MySpace too.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a whole thing. And then people reacted really badly. There was that whole Furor movie that came out, the downfall of something where the downfall of hit. I can't remember the movie, but
I've seen the memes from it. Yeah.
they redid that whole thing, the whole scene, like a 5 minute scene where it's Flo talking to us about the fans making it's really funny, but now it's
Yeah.
funny. Back then we were like, fuck. Like we got schooled, we got owned, and it really took us many, many years to bounce back from that.
So do you think it was just like the clean singing in it that didn't really like mesh?
They say that we were deathcore. I don't We were never intended to be deathcore. There were songs that
Right.
Christian Donaldson wrote, which were a little bit more corey, but there was no we're going to be a deathcore band.
Right.
We want it to be extreme music. We wanted to blend a bunch of styles together, but there was no cohesive chef in the kitchen saying, this is what our restaurant serves.
Mhm.
There was a little bit of from Alex that wrote songs like Resurgence from an Empire. Chris wrote Anoint the Dead, Worship Your Demons. It was just too much.
So would you say it's your then? Is that the comparable
Pardon?
comparison? Would you say it's your band Saint Aang? Is that a
Oh, hell yeah. And it
comparable?
was funny because I was working out today and Saint Anger came on and there's some cool parts in that, especially it's that song too that came on and I was like, everyone hated this. And I understand, but there's still some cool parts in it, which is
Yeah,
what
it's kind
people tell
of.
me all the time.
I kind of feel that way. Like just have, like I said, I only listened to it recently, and I was just kind of like, I think people were probably a little hard on the record. It's not.
But there's people that come
I
out every show, every single show. People come up
yeah,
to me and say, I love the Unspoken King. I was afraid to tell my friends that I liked it. I'm not joking.
that's so
At
funny.
every show, someone comes up and says, will you ever play? And we're like, no, we won't. We will
No,
never play it.
that's fair. I can understand not wanting to play those songs live because
Maybe Worship Your Demons will come back. Maybe. If
yeah,
we're doing like a headline super long set, it's like a 3 minute song, 2 minutes and something. Maybe that's the only one. But I don't have any plans for that in the near future.
yeah. I mean, uh, I can't imagine what with changes and trying to just do something new, especially at that point in time in the metal scene. There was so much going on that everybody was trying to like pick little parts from here and there and like make these weird records that kind of like they either hit or and you guys just did something experimental that maybe didn't work at the time and maybe people will look back on
it
it.
was, we tried. It was interesting. If I was not, I would not be here without that record because I wasn't a death metal vocalist. If they wanted a death metal vocalist, they would have never hired me because I wasn't a death metal vocalist. So
Right.
I'm still grateful that I went through years of shit to be where I am now because now we're having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy to me though that like actually no it's not. Why am I saying that? The internet,
It's
I'm not
horrible.
surprised that
I've
people
written two
send death
records about it.
threats.
Come on.
Yeah, man. Man. It's just insane to me, like how upset people get over something like that. They're gonna
It's their
say that
babies.
I
They're
want you to
precious.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope your bus crashes
Oh my God.
was what we would get. And there was like all these, it was MySpace back then, right? So there was all these like
Yep.
fake MySpace pages that popped up, Craptopsy or Gay Topsy, and with like Cryptopsy in pink. And then I just dropped None So Cute with the pink Cryptopsy in pink. So I guess thanks for the inspiration. But
Yeah, it's I'm kind of involved with like a big gathering, one of my hobbies, and very recently a bunch of cards that got banned, and the insane outbursts from the internet with like all the death threat people that had that like wanted to ban the cards was insane. They like stepped down from their positions within like what they were doing, and they were like, "I didn't sign up for this. Like, I told that I need to kill myself," and
wow.
it was bad.
No.
And it's
It's a,
just like,
yeah.
man,
People love to use the internet as a platform. They love to voice their opinion. That's okay. But
yep,
I've learned over the years that like has a right to free speech. They can think and say whatever they want. They can be mean. It happens, right? Like, and
yeah,
us as human nature, I will read comments because I tell everyone, don't read the comments. I tell myself, don't read the comments, but we drop new music, and what do? I sit here and I read the comments. We only remember the negative comments, and it irks us, but it's okay. It just pushes us to do better, to it forces us to strive and continue to do more.
yeah, yeah. It's something that I've learned too since like doing this is like to not be so harsh about everything else because then what when did that affect me? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know that I want people sitting here this sucks so bad, like
I was like that.
and
The new Linkin Park
yeah,
girl came out, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And I'm not even that. I'm like, I haven't been a fan since the '90s,
right,
or whenever the first record came out, or second, whatever. I trickled off. I went to more heavy stuff.
yeah,
But I found myself watching that Instagram live stream when they were like debuting her, and I was
yep,
so harsh, not like online writing people, but like to friends and for private chats.
sure,
But here I am listening to the record, like it's what happened. Sometimes you just got
yeah,
to get it out of your system, and then you'll get it, and then you're like, oh, maybe I do like broccoli.
yeah. I think there's other dramatic things about her other than joining the band that came out, and I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's not
Well,
really
that's the
what I
internet.
wanted.
They're gonna find stuff about you.
Dude, they
We
dig
got to
up
be
stuff
good
so
people.
fast.
Everyone, even if you think you're a good person, they might find something about you.
I know, and it's like, how did people have the time to do that? That's the other. They put their focus on something
The
better in their
internet
life.
sleuthing. Find
I
cancer.
know.
The cure to cancer, people. It's out there. If you use your internet sleuthing for that, for good.
Seriously.
Back to beer. You're drinking. You don't like IPAs. Um, do you like beer? You're drinking a hard kombucha or a kombucha beer.
I mean,
You didn't like the Molson High Dry.
yeah, yeah. Well, it, but only because it got me drunk real quick. Yeah, I mean, I drank off and on over the years. I'm currently in a state where I've like gained a lot of weight, so I'm trying to like trickle it back a little bit. Not drink as much as I normally do. But I hate to say it, I'm not like a beer connoisseur. Like I
That's fine.
just kind of shitty like Miller Lights, and if I want to treat myself, I get like a real nice sour beer. There's
Okay.
this uh, brewery called Urban Artifact that does a gadget. It's a fruited sour, and it is it's like a blackberry sour, and it's like 12% alcohol, I think.
Oof.
It's so good.
You're
It's
for
so good.
efficiency. I like it.
Yeah, it is a 4 pack, so can't
You can't do all four in one night. No,
no, no.
that's a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think it just came from also like touring. Sometimes you don't get a choice of like what you drink. It's like, oh, here's some well, I like Lone Stars, but get
I've had
whatever
some
the
Lone
venue
Star.
gives you.
Yeah,
Yeah, Rolling Rock. And it's like, all right, I guess this is what I'm drinking. Can't afford to buy like a nice beer.
I am very lucky, and I have been very smart that my friend Donnie Hill told me that he was touring with Tesseract back in the
Yeah,
day, and James Monteith was writing a blog or for some website. I can't remember the website, but he was told all his fans that if you bring me beer, I'll review it on this blog or website. And Donnie was like, I had the podcast rolling at that time, and he was like, you should do that. So I started doing that. And massive shout outs to all the fans and Vox and Hops heads and past alumni and friends that bring me beer at every show. So I
yeah,
don't have to, well, I still go to bars and taste things, but the bus is always extremely well stocked with loads of craft beer.
that's so
And
awesome.
it's pretty awesome. It's really, and especially in the United States for some reason. In Europe, it's a little bit more dry compared to the States, but the States is more appreciated. Not that it's not appreciated in
Right,
Europe. It's just that the
different
rider in
culture.
Europe is insane, and there's always just baskets, these tubs, crates, these crates of beer just that get piled up hypothetically if we take a night off drinking, which we need to do because we're humans. We can't just go 24/7.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think like the best beer I've had actually was an IPA. I will say that because I used to live in Santa Rosa next to the why am I blanking on the name of the brewery? But they have like Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger.
Oh yeah, that's sick. Yeah, I know exactly what
Yeah,
that is. Oh, I am I blanking on it too? I can see
Russian
the
River.
label. Thank
Russian
you.
River.
I
Yeah.
had one the other day. Well, the other day was a year
Oof.
ago when we played at Berkeley, the Cornerstone. They had it on tap, and I was like, I
Yes.
have to. And it's one of those things. It's these mythical beers. It's like the
Yes.
Alchemist, Heady Topper. You see it, you have to.
I'm actually surprised they had it on tap. That's kind of crazy. They
Yeah, yeah. And the guy
usually
was like,
have
"Oh
them.
yeah, you have to." And I was like, "Yeah, I have to." It's an 8%
Yeah.
monster beer.
It was crazy watching people like basically invade the town like when they would release it once a year
Oh
because
yeah,
people would just fly from all over it and then their whole
the beer
downtown
nerds,
people
the
would
beer
just camp
nerds.
out.
Yeah,
Oh, and to see that I was like, wow. And
I
then if
guess I'll
you
try.
the weird thing was if you like lived in the city or like went there enough, like they would let you cut in line, be like, "Oh, hey,
Oh,
come here." And like,
you're special. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was kind of nice. But, sometimes I'm there for like a day. It's like, oh man. But, you just drink one beer and leave. You don't really like try to take up space and all. And all. That's
Yeah, yeah,
just,
they're selling their beers. If they're gonna let you
yeah.
get in there, they gotta let them make their money because it's their like big day of the year
Oh yeah.
where they're crushing it financially.
Yeah. So I guess I don't like IPAs because that was probably one of the better beers I've ever had.
That's like a
So
super bitter IPA
it
versus
really
what
is.
this one is. This one's more juicy. hot juice, tropical fruity. What about touring? Have you toured again after Carnifex? Is that something that you do? Is it something you miss?
Ah, man, I miss it so much. I wanted to keep doing it, but I didn't really like know anybody else that was like looking for just a crew guy or whatever.
Hmm.
But I mean, like, I feel like I could tour manage too because I've managed like stores and all other kinds of shit in my personal life as well. And um, yeah, I just never like made any extra connections to be like, hey, man, I really would love to stay on the road. And so it's just been that's kind of why I started doing this. Just kind of
To
like stay
reconnect
involved.
with everyone.
Yeah, stay involved in the scene. And then like COVID hit and I got really burnt out on doing it and I stopped
Doing the
for
podcast? Oh, it's
yeah.
crazy. The COVID was insane. To take me
Yeah.
back to starting the podcast, so you started the
Mhm.
podcast because you weren't touring,
Yep.
and I want that story. How did the heavy metal history come to life?
Um, I think I was just talking to a friend of mine and I was like, hey, it'd be really like knew more about like how records are made other than like a few documentaries here and there, or
Yeah,
like if
from
we
the
just
artist's mouth. Yeah,
yeah. But obviously starting something out like this, you have no pull anywhere. So it's like, well, how am I going to get to talk to so and so? Like, you can't, there's no way to do it. So really it started out really bare bones. My buddy just kind of talking and talking about their history and when the records came out, kind of little stories about how they were made, and then just kind of like our thoughts on them. And then it evolved from there to where like I kind of went back and just re-recorded everything because the early were so bad,
the audio
and
was
I
bad.
just it was really bad, like kind of embarrassing. People even listen to it, but they did, and so I went back everything with his blessing. He was like, "Yeah, man, I don't care. That's fine. I totally want you to like take the helm since he couldn't really do it anymore." So I went back and just like did a ton of whatever I was gonna, whatever album or band I was gonna talk about, and like did it narration style. Just being
Super
like,
cool.
yeah, like audio history lesson, basically. Like here's Black Sabbath, and here's literally everything for their history. That was kind of like the jumping off point for it. I thought I was like, well, people are going to want to know about Black Sabbath, even though there's a million books you can read and documentaries. I feel like that's a good starting point. So I kind of went from there, and then eventually was just kind of throwing emails out to the wind, being like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I would really love if you have the time, and most times no, which is totally fair. But every other time I answer, people are like, dude, that's a great idea. I'm in. And it just kind of like evolved from there. And it was doing really, really well before I kind of went on hiatus. And man, the hiatus like killed it, honestly.
Yeah,
So
because
coming back to it,
people have like a relationship to a
yeah,
podcast, and it's like what part of their habits. And then if you
yep.
just take that away, they're gonna find something else to listen to.
Which I should have known that, and I shouldn't have gone like
Yeah, yeah,
four
but mental
years.
health, mental health is very important. People don't
Right.
understand what goes into doing this. It's hours and
I
hours of work, and it's literally a passion project. There's not
Yeah.
much money in podcasting.
Uh-uh. It's crazy, man. Like sometimes I either have to record like literally all day, which I'm sure you know.
Hmm.
You have to block out time in a day, or I have to spend just like reading books and watching videos, trying to get like any little bit of information I can about a band if I'm not able to talk to them. Because I just want to
Yeah,
I don't want to miss anything. And then people will be like, actually, this
yeah.
happened. It's like, crap, how did I miss that? Which like it happened in the early days because I was missing stuff, not knowing where everything was at, like to look for. But
Hmm.
I just think those stories are important, especially with metal. I wish more bands spent time like chronicling how stuff was made.
We're just so
Um,
lazy. We're just so. Well, the issue is that most of no, we're not. The issue is that most of us are working full-time
right?
jobs on top
Yeah,
of going to the studio. So there's no time to have like a videographer or nowadays with social media and certain videographers, I guess like shooting and editing and recording stuff is cheaper than it used to
yeah,
be. So
that's true.
nowadays, all these young bands are really good at social media. Lorna Shore, once again,
Yeah,
these young bands that are just automatically like when you're going out on tour, there's a videographer there
which is
capturing
cool.
things. Oh, it's super cool. It's something that I want, but I'll prioritize a light person over.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice though because I do enjoy watching those videos. So now that it feels like there's a good stopping point for me, like the 2020s where everybody started to like chronicle stuff more and be like, "Hey, we're
Mm-hmm.
doing these studio videos of how
Mm-hmm.
everything was recorded." I'm like that's I love that. I want to watch that. That's what I want to know about. Um, so
Heck
that's kind of
yes.
where it came from, honestly, is just like
That's super
wanting to
sick.
know the stories.
The pandemic was crazy though, because everyone was home and we could
Yeah, it
talk
was
to anyone. And everyone's
yeah,
dropping these records and their labels and their publicists were like, you have to do these interviews. It's like, how
right.
many listeners do they have? How many downloads did they get? They're like, we don't care. Just do it.
I think that's where I got lucky with some of my guests during that time too, man. But
That's
even then,
where
I
I
was
knew
still doing
all
really
my
well
big,
during that.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, now it's like I tried going for a couple guests and I'm like showing them my numbers and they're like, "Oh, that doesn't seem like much." I'm like, "Well, it's more than this person that they went on this
Yeah.
thing, you know?" And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Then I would say it's well, it's not the numbers that matters, it's who's listening.
right.
But that
That's
is the
good.
truth though. That is the
Yeah.
truth though. Because in certain spheres of things, it's like we have the right people listening to us, the people
Yeah.
that hypothetically might skew something. That's more so in. I have a friend that wrote me today. He's like, I got this deal. What do I charge them? And I was like, well, I know that he has less listeners than me or downloads than me, and I can only charge him a certain amount. And I'm like, he's in the craft beer industry in Quebec.
Oh
It's
wow.
like whoever's listening to him, like whoever like the advertisers are, if they're pitching towards brewers or stuff like that, all the brewers are listening to him. So his worth is worth more because who's listening to him? It doesn't matter on the numbers.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
How about that?
And numbers are interesting too. Like I had done a cross episode with Dewey from the Peer Pleasure podcast.
Yeah.
And he was like, your numbers, just imagine, dude, like you open your back door and there's this many people sitting there listening to this conversation. Did you ever imagine that? So even if it's
I
100
know.
people, 500 people, 10,000 people. It's even if it's 100 people, it's cool that you can drop something into the world and you open your door and there's 100 people sitting there just wanting to listen to you ramble about something.
Yeah. Which I'm like extremely thankful for. And even though it's been kind of like starting at square one, like even doing
Mhm.
YouTube stuff now is all new for me, even though I should have been doing it 4 years ago, you know?
Yeah, I don't
Um,
handle YouTube very well, people. I should
it's
be
not
better. Yeah,
it's not fun.
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's
A lot of work goes into doing a podcast, people. So talk to me about the burnout, because I've had that moment and I've
yeah.
adapted my lifestyle rather than stopping, because I've hit that wall where I wanted to stop. I remember interviewing Guar. I think it was the second time I interviewed Guar.
Mhm.
And I was like sitting here and I was like, this isn't fun. I just want this to be over. They were great. It wasn't them. It was me. It was my mindset, my brain, where I was at. And I spoke to my wife afterwards, who is basically the producer of the podcast, and she was like, let's take breaks. Let's and that's what I've been doing since then. So I do 3 months on, I take a month off, and right now I'm on a month off, so there's no episode dropping for the next 4 weeks. I have everything recorded. I could if I wanted to. I'm just choosing not
Yeah.
to. And it's sort of helped and it makes me feel good. This summer, I was on tour, touring and then running the podcast is another demon because the band's been really busy. We did 133 shows promoting As Gamora Burns in 15 months, 14 months. And it wasn't easy. In the summer, I was like, I think I want to not do this anymore.
Yeah.
I had this moment. I was on the bandwagon and I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I don't like it. And then I had an interview. I came home, took it easy, and I did a chat with Carl from Nile, and that went really well. And I felt invigorated again. And then another thing that really brought me back was I've been doing the podcast for 6 years, and since I've been doing a podcast, I haven't listened to another podcast.
Right.
So I started listening to podcasts again,
Yeah.
and I realized that I don't have to do anything. If you listen to these comedian podcasts, the Andrew, what was it, the Bad Friends podcast?
Uh-huh.
That's what I found myself falling into. They just sit there and shoot the shit
Yeah. Yeah.
like five
Santino, is
times
that
a
who you're
week.
talking about?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny as fuck. It's amazing. So I've every episode that I've had after that, I just started to relax and
Hmm.
not respond to publicists. I love all you
Yeah.
publicists. Keep sending me guests, but I don't want to do them. But I'll book who I want. and I'll just
Yeah.
sit down and have fun with someone and have the conversation I want. And if I have to promote something, it's because I want to, not because I
I
have to hit a
think
mark.
I think those are all things I was also feeling, minus not having to tour. But it's, when you like just say working a normal job, uh
Yeah.
man, like I was working hours a week.
Mm.
Now during COVID, and nobody was really working. It's just the strain of how everything was going in the world and how unsure everything was. Like very little to like no support system. Um, it wasn't really the guests, like kind of like what you were saying. Like most interviews tend to go pretty well, and at the end of it, I kid you not, I'm not trying to like horn here or anything, but every guest has always been like, "Dude, this was fun than I thought." Like you ask really
Yeah.
good, engaging
Yeah.
stuff.
Because you don't ask the same shit questions,
Right.
which is why one of the reasons I started the podcast. You know how many shitty interviewers are out there that are way bigger than us on
Yeah.
platforms, way more out there than us. It boggles my mind who people get jobs, how people get jobs. But
Yeah. And it's just like I tried to do something different with it. And like that felt good getting that validation from the people
mhm.
that I care about and like, I like their music and everything. So it wasn't really that aspect of it. The only other thing that really bothered me was dealing with publicists. It was endlessly frustrating trying to explain to them what I'm trying to do. The numbers thing again, where it's
I
like,
never shared it. I would never share it. I'd be like,
yeah,
that's it. And I'm available at this time. They're not
yeah,
available. I don't care. Next. I don't care.
yeah. And so like that was really frustrating and kind of deflating at times where it's like, man, I know that I could do a really good interview with this person, but whatever, can't get it. And yeah, just like working in the world and all the stuff that was going into it at the time. And I was having a lot of technical issues with my equipment too. That was really frustrating because I kept putting out these like really bad recordings and I like some to save my life. And I was just like, man, at first it was going to start as a break. Like I was just going to the year off. And time went on. I was like, I don't miss doing this like at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't
That's why I
miss
didn't
it.
stop. I was worried that it was such a big part of my identity that I was
Yeah.
like, who am I going to be? Obviously, I'm still the singer of Cryptopsy, but
Right.
I've been saying for so many years, hey, it's Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Box and the Hospital podcast. I mean, it's such a huge part. So you were afraid that that was going to go, and you didn't miss it at all.
No, no. And then like I would check in on the podcast every so often, be like, how's it doing? And then I would see like the insane numbers I was still getting, and I was like, who the fuck is listening to this still? Like I haven't done anything
It's
in
that
six
long
months.
tail. It's the long tail of all these people listening to the hundreds of episodes.
Yeah. And then like right around 2020, late 22, 20, early 23, that's when it like I finally saw it like dying its part.
Because
And
people went back to
then
work.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
and
a big part of it too. Yeah.
I had been kind of like thinking on like every time I'd see Fred, he'd be like, "Dude, I missed the podcast." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, man. Like, I just don't doing it right now." And then like weirdly enough, I I was like, "I'll start I was gonna start a horror group with a coworker of mine because we were both really into film and especially horror films."
And you know how to run a
And
podcast.
yeah, and I was like, "Great." And then somehow, like right out of the gate, I was able to and uh my friend who was doing the podcast with me didn't want to do the interview and I was like that's fine I'll. And it went really really well and then I shit I miss doing this.
Mm.
That's why I did this, like this, talking to this person whose film I love and getting those stories about how it was made and having a good rapport with like favorite movies and all that kind of stuff is like damn, that's what I miss about this. And so I like toyed with the idea of bringing it back. And then I ran into Fred again. They were playing a show around, and he was like, "Hey, I need you to meet some friends of mine. It's these guys in a local band around here called Sunmancer." And like we all hit it off. And Fred was like, "Hey, man, you should bring back the podcast and have these guys on." And I was like,
Fucking correct.
"You know what? I kind of think that's a good idea." And so like we all sat there and brainstormed for like 20, 30 minutes. And I was like, "Hey, if you guys are down to do this, like I'll give me some time. I gotta save up money to get this shit going again." you all want to do it, like I'll make it happen. About 6 months, but it happened.
The seeds were planted.
Yeah, seeds were planted thanks to Fred again, and that interview like not even weeks before that, and at the
That's
tail end
awesome.
of 23. So it's about 3 4 years that I just kind of let it go,
That's
and then
amazing.
back, and it's been, it's still had its ups and downs, and like trying to come back and get to where it was. It's been a long road, but I think I'm happy with it, and I don't hate doing it. It's the upside.
That's the important thing. You have to like check in on yourself to see if it's still
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. I think there
What are
was a
some
couple
things that
months.
sorry,
Go ahead.
you finish that first. No, no, finish that first.
There was like a couple months during the summer where I was starting to feel a little burnt out again, but I did exactly what you said. I was like, you know what? I don't care about now. I'm just going to take this month off. And
Yeah.
I did that and it helped. And then
Yeah, but and it
yeah,
doesn't
like
necessarily mess with the numbers that bad because we have so many
right.
episodes. It's like
Yeah.
if we're getting a new fan that's popping in at the end of a season, I call them seasons. I do 3 seasons a year. I don't
Okay.
announce them as seasons, but that's basically what they are.
Yeah.
If you pop in a new fan at the end of a season, they're going to have 4 weeks to go back and listen to the other 400 plus episodes
Yeah.
that they've missed. You know, they can hear George from Cannibal Corpse talk about something. They can hear Randy from Lamb of God talk about something. Shit that came out years ago.
hmm
And
That's
it's
what I do when I find a new podcast. I just go
exactly,
back. Yeah.
exactly. What are some things that have come to you thanks to running a podcast?
Like what do you mean? Like as far as
In your personal
like
life, for yourself as a human, I know for myself, there's been like a lot of personal growth thanks to a podcast.
yeah, what's weird is I've gotten kind of better at public speaking.
Yeah,
And
we
like
have no choice.
yeah, I used to be like terrified of doing stuff like this. Like I will not like try to put myself out there. Anything like that. I used to be like, no, 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 not me. Now it's like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, come on, I can
Yeah,
ask questions. I can find common ground with
yeah.
anybody. It doesn't matter. It's helped me with finding common ground because you have to keep a conversation going. Um, I think that I've only like ran into on the podcast where it's like I'm just getting yes-anded. It's like, well, I don't know what to do with this, man. And
I'm not releasing this episode. How about that? But
I've only had to do that once. So
what's that story? Don't you don't have to name drop, but what was the reason?
funny enough, it was a repeat guest. So the first time I had them on, it went great. They were like, dude, it was the same thing. It was like, dude, this was so fun. Like anytime you want us back on, we're down. And so I had them on again, and the guy got so short with me and like giving me the most kind of dickish answers to things. Like I was asking stupid questions, and I didn't feel like I was asking stupid questions. Um, but who knows? Maybe I was. I need to go back and listen to it and see how bad it really is. I could have been too
You
hard on
never dropped
myself.
it.
Nope, didn't put it out because it like I was so deflated after that. I was like, oh my God, that was probably the worst interview I've ever done.
Was that
It
before
I
the
don't
break, the hiatus?
It was a while. Yeah, it was probably like a year before. It was
Okay.
like 2019 ish.
Mm. I had two that I didn't drop. One was because me and my guests were far too inebriated. It was
Those are fun.
it was a 45-minute podcast that none of us knew what we talked about. But it was with my bassist. I've spoken about this on my podcast. We were going in Europe with a board. It's 2019. We were going into the UK, and whenever we play Belgium, for some reason we go into the UK that night. And Flo, my drummer, always says, "Don't get too drunk, guys, because we're going across the border tonight." And what do? We tend to overindulge in Belgian beers. So that was the case, and we missed our ferry because someone was too inebriated. And then me and Ollie sat and recorded a whole podcast that just never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
I re-recorded an episode with him once we got back home after that tour, and I included a little snippet of that episode in the outro, so there's a little Easter egg there for people because we're really drunk. I never listened to the whole thing. The second one was I during the pandemic I hosted these Zoom parties on Thursdays, which is
Yeah.
where the Thirsty Thursday gang came from.
I remember that.
And they still hang out every Thursday. They're amazing. The
That's
group is
incredible.
smaller, but they're very interconnected. They travel to see each other. It's amazing. Um, and I invited this singer that's no longer a part of this band to come and be my guest host, and he was on something. I don't know what he was
Mm.
on, but it wasn't fun. So that ended quickly, and I just never dropped that episode. So those are the two that just never came out for me.
Yeah, I think I've had another two that I've had to pull by request from the person,
Y-
and the other,
Ooh, you had released it or afterwards? Like they did the interview and then they were like, actually, can you just ixnay that whole thing?
yeah, and I totally understand why they're transgender, not want their like dead name or anything like that. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
absolutely, I
Yeah,
will
no,
take
no,
that down for
totally.
you, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, I understand.
And then they got out of the metal scene entirely, so it was just like
Yeah.
didn't matter.
No,
But
totally.
I was more than happy to oblige that for them. I didn't want, if they weren't comfortable with it. And then the other person got accused of a bunch of really messed up. It's like I don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
having this on
Yeah,
here.
I got one like that. And
I
you're
didn't know
reminding me
that at
that
the time.
you're reminding me that I gotta pull that episode.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun when that happens. But
Yeah.
that's honestly not bad for, almost 200 episodes after a few years break. But
Hmm.
that's the kind of stuff you run into occasionally with this, doing this all the time. You just never know.
You never like we're meeting people. We've never
Yeah.
met. You seem
No.
like a nice person, but I don't really know who you are. And it's the same thing
I have to go
with when
return
we
some
have guests.
videotapes after this, Matt. I just need you to know that.
But that's a good thing that I've gotten from this too, is that public speaking for sure. I used to do interviews and I would talk, and then as you're talking in your head, you're like, "The fuck you saying?" And then you get lost in what you're saying. And my first 100 episodes, maybe it was still the same thing that I wouldn't be confident just even speaking. I know I'm going to edit it afterwards too,
Right.
and that will be the longest part, me editing myself, which is
Yeah.
crazy. Now I've learned that if I stutter, if I do anything, I just stop and say it again properly, and I'm just going to piece it together perfectly. That's something that I've learned over years.
Oh man, I wonder I should do that.
Yeah, yeah. If ever you stutter, you just stop, say it again, and it's the easiest edit in the world. But that's one thing. And the other thing is the connectivity within the music industry. Like I'm sponsoring, presenting Devastation of the Nation right now.
Yeah.
That's from Vox and Hops. That's from doing episodes with DeFons and becoming friends with them. Obviously, Cryptopsy had a relationship, and I had a relationship with Cryptopsy before that. But Vox and Hops is what solidified that, and my relationship with brewers. I step into bars of people that I've interviewed, and they're expecting me to be there. They're like, "Oh, we were waiting when you were going to come." It's sick. It's amazing. And
That's
then like
amazing.
connectivity with other bands and crew members. It's amazing. Using the podcast as a promotion tool for upcoming tours. I did that with the Carnifex run. I had
Yeah.
Austin from Heavy Hitter on. I had Lucas from Mental Cruelty, Alex from Distant Tomb, and
Oh
then
hell yeah.
Scott from Carnifex just leading up to the tour. I never met any of them. So when we got there on day one, I knew them all. It was amazing. It's like we're not, I don't know them, but like the ice has been broken and we can just hang out.
That's such a good thing that you have there being able to do that. Because it is hard like that sometimes. I remember on tour like not knowing anybody.
People have like, their veils up, their shields
Yeah.
up,
Yeah,
and
because it's like how do you get to know this person that you've never met before, even though you're gonna
mhm.
spend 30 days on the road with them and like
Then the worst
try
part
and
is
find
sometimes I do interviews on the road sometimes, and then
right.
we drink on tour.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get inebriated, and it happened with Atheist with the drummer. Goddamn, I know. Don't listen to this. I don't remember. Fermenters, his other band. He's so happy. He's amazing. Goddamn, I can't remember his name. That's horrible. But we hung out for weeks in the back lounge, and like I asked him every question that I would ever ask him on a podcast, but I didn't
Yeah.
remember any of the answers. And then we had a podcast together, and then he's telling me these answers, which I'm asking him again, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you told me this." Oh yeah, you told me. So at least with the podcast, I have a record of what has been said to me so that I can remember stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you thing, man. It's really been nice when like I've had somebody on there. They're like, we're in city, like hit us up,
Yeah.
like we'll get
Well,
you out
hang
to the
out.
show or like we'll try and do something in real life. And I'm like, that'd be great. Take them up. Very rarely do I do that, but it's the thought that counts, which is really
Oh,
nice.
absolutely. I hit some people up sometimes. I'm my classic move is I'll show up in the afternoon
Yeah,
and I'll just hang out with them, take them to a bar, go eat, or just like show up at the venue,
yeah.
just chit chat for a moment, and then I'll bounce. Like, you're not staying for the show? I'm like, no, I'm okay. I just want to see you. You sure you don't want to stay? I'm like, nah, I've seen a show. Played
Right.
133 of them this year. I'm okay. I'm gonna go home. But
Yeah, that was another weird go to shows for a very long time after touring because it was just like
my ears are
I've seen
tired.
it like a million
Yeah,
times. Yeah.
my ears are just
Oh,
I like silence.
Yeah. I messed up not wearing earplugs when I was doing it, and I have tinnitus
Ooh,
so bad.
yeah, that's yeah. You got to learn to love it, is what I've been told.
Yep.
Frank Marino, Mike Marino, the guy that found me there, his uncle's Frank Marino, who's like a guitar god. He's like a Jimi Hendrix-esque guitar god.
Hmm.
Opeth love him. Everyone loves him. He has horrible tinnitus, and he told Mike years ago that we have to learn to love our tinnitus. If not, it will
Yeah.
drive you crazy.
Yeah, you know, when I'm like when it's really quiet, that if it's just day-to-day stuff, I don't really notice it
Exactly.
that much
That's it.
unless
Yeah.
I get that real bad like
Yeah. And
episode of it.
we do that little shake in our ears if it's going to fix anything. But
Yeah. That's, youthful mistake. Oh, this is never going to affect me in the rest of my life at all, even though 20, 20 now you're nearing
I
40
like
and it's like, oh God,
I like making collabs. This is a classic Vox and Hops question here. I like making collabs. I've made probably 80, 85 beers in total in
mhm,
the 6 years of the podcast's existence. It's my passion. If what would be the perfect collab for heavy metal history?
like flavor wise.
It doesn't have to be a beer. Beer's not your thing, so you have to find something else.
Oh man.
A
Okay.
merch item, something that would be cool to have your logo on.
Oh my goodness. That is a tough one. I think it would have to be a Magic the Gathering card for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Some kind of that's actually one of my favorite game is when I find a card that is metal band already has that name. Like there's this demon card, and I'm always like, hey guys, magic card. There's a disentomb card.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that. Like every now and
There's
then
no
it's like
Cryptopsy yet.
there's not.
We should
There's not.
collab with them. How open are they? They're actually pretty
I would
open
say
because
fairly open.
a lot of people have left, you said, so there's new people in.
I I would say they're fairly open. Like they do like these artist collaborations all the time. So
Hmm.
like uh I'm thinking on that dude's name who did like every Black Dahlia murder shirt ever.
Oh, Riddick. No.
They
No.
did work with Rid too. Yeah, yeah. He did some cards for them. Man, why am I blanking on that dude's name? Anyways, he did some magic. So like they definitely like they've done like heavy metal themed
That's
like
cool.
art style stuff. So they are aware that there's a little bit of a crossover with the
I
metal stuff
wish
there.
that I was more into the whole thing because then I would be more genuine. I feel like I would be
Don't even
remiss
worry.
trying to collab with them because it doesn't fit my brand. But what would your
Right.
card be, and what would the powers, what would the points be? Because it's a point. I know a little bit about it, but I don't know anything about
It would have to be a saga, which a saga card basically tells a story,
it.
but it
That would
does
make sense.
something. Yeah, does something on each step. If I had to pick just to keep it in like metal theme, it'd probably be a black saga because there's like five colors. It's like red, blue, green, black, white. Black does kind of like evil stuff in the game, so I think that would have to be on brand. I know not the cliche of like metal's evil. I don't personally think that, but
No, we're not
um,
evil, but we're definitely in. If there's like a color sphere, like a
yeah,
we're in the darker side of that for sure.
we borrow the aesthetic for sure, and then the questionable. But yeah, I think it would be a Black Saga card. I don't know what it would do, honestly. Uh, that's a lot to think about.
I like that. I know
Because
you're gonna go to bed. You're gonna think about it as you're returning your
I know,
videos.
right?
But
That'd be a cool like business card idea to make like a magic card, but it's got
there you go.
like all the information on it.
Do it.
I think that is a good. I think I'm gonna do that.
Do it. I like it. You send
Or
me one.
sticker. Yeah,
There you go. You send me one. Stickers are back, by the way. I
I
don't know if
know.
band people know this, but I'm old, right? But stickers are back. Kids want stickers. There was
Yeah,
a moment when venues wouldn't let you have stickers because people would stick them everywhere.
everywhere. Toilets are covered in stickers. Oh my goodness.
That reminds me, I got to get stickers for the next tour. But
I have a question. If I could get your outside opinion on this,
shoot,
what do you think it is about None So Vile that has made that record stand the test of time? Like because you got and but you outside. kind of
Yeah,
perspective about everything with it. So I'd be curious to get your opinion on like what it is about that record specifically.
I did both None So Vile and Blasphemy in its entirety for shows at MDF, actually, both of
Yeah.
them. Um, Blasphemy is more primitive, more immature compared to None So Vile. None So Vile is like the record where John Levasseur really was more at the helm than Steve Thibault at that era.
Hmm.
That record has, well, first off, Lord Worm's vocals are way better. That's the first thing. I know that from hearing from people that were there, that Worm had issues tracking Blasphemy of Flesh.
Oh wow.
He was definitely more in shape for None So Vile because he tracked it in a day with a bottle of whiskey, is the story that I've heard. Flo was super sick during None So Vile. Very, very sick. Just a cold, but had fever, and it was at a studio on tape, so you can't displace things, you can't reschedule. It's you were doing drums. Um, it's groovier. It's melodic while remaining weird. Lord Worm's delivery is insane, but there's this strangeness about it that makes it interesting, and the grooves are just so catchy while being not super square. It's
Hmm.
basically like the Police of death metal.
Okay.
It's you feel like it's square and that it's 4/4 normal, but it's not. And then they throw these weird traps, as we call them in Cryptopsy, where they flip the riff or cut a riff in half and do it 6 times or 7 times instead of 6 times. So it keeps you on your toes more than Blasphemy.
Yeah,
The album artwork is iconic.
that is
There's a
true.
bunch of things that just all tie into it. And then it must have just came out at the right time where a bunch of people got their hands on it too, maybe because they signed a deal with what are they called? I probably shouldn't mention them because we're still disputing them. A
Hmm.
European label
I
at
got
that time, which maybe more people got their hands on it. What's funny though is that I interviewed Lord Worm for the first anniversary of the podcast, and he left after None So Vile and came back before Once Was Not,
you. Yeah.
and he had no idea that the band was popular. He had no idea that None So Vile was a whole thing. He was just gone, like from the scene and just working. It's just crazy. And then like the band had like when he was in None So Vile, they didn't tour Europe. They just toured Canada. Maybe they no, there's shows like of them in Knoxville on YouTube that I've seen. So they must have done some like US runs where they just bopped down and stuff. I don't even know if they had visas back then. Just
Yeah.
doing what a band did, crawling into a van and getting stuff done. But the lore of None So Vile is basically it's one of the top five death metal records in the existence of death metal. And I'm lucky to be able to go up there and pull the mic cord out of my guts. And the fans know right away that we're gonna play Slit Your Guts. It's a very special record. And 2026, I'm giving you some juice here, is the
Yeah.
30th anniversary. We're planning some good stuff. I got a good email today about that actually.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I always keep my eye on anniversary because that's kind of what I
Hmm.
like look for now. Um, yeah, the thing that always intrigued me the most about that record too is it was a death metal was dead, in like the late '90s, early '90s or mid '90s, I guess. And like that proves that it was never dead. Like how much that record stood the test of time, and like I
It's
think it
insane.
just
It's
kind of
it's
went to the
to this
wayside for
day
a little
is
bit.
like we get the Spotify numbers every month. I get it. I think I got it today.
Hmm.
And Graves of the Fathers, #1 stream song every year,
Yeah,
every month. It's a song I'm gonna have to play. It's just the way it is. I like playing
yeah,
it, so I'm happy. And the crowd goes crazy. It's one of these the grooves. Kids want grooves. They want fast. They want chaotic, but they want a groove that they can hang on to. A groove that is more complex than just a standard breakdown.
yeah, yeah. I can agree with that too. I always look for like metal and death metal is like how does the patterns kind of change here
Hmm.
into something that's just not like the same open note for
No,
a
no,
minute and
there's
a
like an
half.
educated. way about it. We're writing a new record right now. We're in studio right now. So it's
Nice.
just how can we honor the past while remaining relevant while not ripping off ourselves?
I bet that's hard, man. Like especially like being a band for so long, it's like, wait, didn't I write this already? Like, where did
There
I?
are
No?
Chris
Okay.
was messing. I was on the phone with Chris the other day, and he was like, because we wrote everything so close together, there's like the same riff in two songs. He's like, I have to fix that. I'm like, well, I know you're gonna fix it. And he's like, I have to fix that. I'm like, well, you will, but that's what happens when you write everything so close together. But yes,
Yeah.
it's luckily Chris has been at the helm since writing wise after John left after the self-titled. Since 2016, 2014, when we started dropping the Book of Suffering,
Hmm.
he was basically felt like an imposter trying to write Cryptopsy music, trying to live up to John's legacy. And then now I think now with As Gamora Burns, I feel like he's finally comfortable writing for Cryptopsy. And then we wrote this whole new record while on tour. We did some riffs on Death to All in the bandwagon while it was moving.
Nice.
No, it wasn't fun. I highly
No?
don't do that, people. It's not fun. You can't write on moving on a bandwagon. Bandwagons bands too much. And then we had
Yeah, I
days
guess when you have to
off.
be like technically proficient, it's like,
It was just annoying and things were moving around too much. Death to All, we had not enough days off to get it done in hotel rooms. We had 2 days off on that 44 date, 44 shows, 2 days off, 3 days off really, but one of them we were flying. The Carnifex tour, we had more time. So we had 5 days off in hotels where we basically wrote the rest of the record. We're stoked. Yeah. Drum started today. I'm very excited.
is that how you guys kind of prefer writing? Is like on
Studio, so it was an
tour or
argument. No, we've never done that before. It was,
okay.
but there was an argument for many years when Chris started taking over writing. Flo likes to jam. Chris has a studio. Chris writes in the studio.
Yep.
It was an argument for many years. Finally, Flo succumbed, and we write in the studio.
I get it. I mean, he's been doing that forever, right? And it's just like his
That's
style
how
of like
Chris does
writing.
it, and Flo is the opposite. And that's how
Yeah.
when John came back for the self-titled, he showed up at Flo's house for 5, 6 months, just jamming, getting songs, getting beats out, getting stuff out. It's a new era. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're making it work. We have deadlines. We have tours planned out for the next year.
Wow.
We're
Wow.
I feel like as Chris said in a text the other day, I feel like we're a real band now. No shade to what, obviously was happening before us.
Oh, of
But
course.
back to None So Vile. None So Vile is iconic. It's one of those amazing records from A to Z. And I've learned so much from it. And I will learn so much from it again in 2026
Yeah.
because it's one of those gifts that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, I think that's the other amazing part about this with like looking into the history of like seeing what records stood out the most and like
Hmm.
stood the test of time versus the ones that kind of like fell to the wayside or
Hmm.
like some about one or two records with incredible records and then they never did anything again. What happened there? Like that's why, like I want
It's
the
hard.
story
It's
of
just
like
being in a band is really, really hard. That's what it is. It's five, six, 4, 5, 6 people more sometimes in a relationship together, and that's not easy.
that is very true.
And it takes then that's that piece of the puzzle, and then there's the higher powers around them, the labels and the publicists and the climate of the music industry at that time, and then where the music industry, like the consumers are at. Like no one would have guessed a year before. I keep talking about Lorna Shore, but no one would have guessed a year before A Fire in the Hellstorm, whatever, I don't know, that song,
Yeah.
that Lorna Shore would have popped as big as they have.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about him before that,
Yeah. I
to
had
be
heard
fair.
the
And I,
name.
I feel like I have my name on or like my finger on the pulse pretty well.
Mhm.
But yeah, no.
Just insane. So you never know what people are going to bite on. Just Sanguisugabog, another one. Just
Yeah.
you never know.
I have a weird connection to that band in that my one of my ex-girlfriends is engaged to the singer.
Oh, Devin. Yeah,
So happy for them though. She's cool.
that's awesome. Yeah.
I yeah, they're Sangskobog is on the 19th with Whitechapel, so I'm going to that show
Heck
for
yes.
sure. Yeah. Hoping to like,
Huge.
you know, meet up with them and be like, "Hey man, do my podcast. Like let's get something going here."
Oh, I have his email. Don't worry, I'll make it work. But he's an alumni, but
Yeah. Yeah, they're
not a problem.
that's one band I was lucky to be like onto before most people
Mhm.
the hipster thing, like I knew about them before everybody else. Um Actually, it's funny you mentioned this early on when we were talking, that friend that you had that like just knew about
Mhm.
everything before anybody. I grew up in a small town, so that high
That was
school, like
you?
I was the guy that was like, no, 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 no. I understand you love Norma Jean, but like Cradle of Filth or Dimmu Borgir, Napalm something, and they're like, no, what is that? And I got to be the guy to like show all my
Tape
friends these
trade and get
messed
burn
up
them
bands.
CDs.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Especially back then, it was all like, here, man, check this out. So fun. Now it's
That's
like, here's a
amazing.
Spotify link.
Yeah. And then they're like, do I listen to it? No, they won't listen to
Yeah. Yeah.
it. Dustin, I have one last question for you.
Yes,
Classic
sir.
Vox and Hops wrap-up question. It probably doesn't happen to you very often, but it definitely probably happened to you on the Montreal Asshole Assaults tour back in the day in 2009.
Yeah.
What is your hangover cure?
So first, this is gonna sound really, but it's forceful puking. If I do not
Oh,
throw up the night before, I make myself throw up because I know I'm gonna be feeling awful the rest of the day if I don't.
ooh,
Once I
that's in the
throw up,
morning or that's at night?
whenever I get up, yeah, it's
Okay,
if it's the night before, nah, it ain't happening unless I just drink too much and have thrown up
that
already,
saves you. That will
which
save you
which has happened multiple times on tours.
then.
Um, I found that I feel better if I just throw up right away because I'm just getting more sick throughout the day, and I will
And
throw
it's
up
gonna come.
eventually.
It's imminent. It's imminent.
Right.
Yeah.
I just drink a lot of water, and then like I wouldn't really eat too much just because that would make me, upset stomach again. And then if I had a headache, pop some aspirin and keep drinking
Heck
water
yes.
the rest of the day. Maybe I wouldn't really do a thing with like getting more alcohol. That would just make me feel worse.
Now the hair dog is
So
it works is the scary part, but
yeah.
you immediately get super drunk again, and
Hmm.
then you not that I've ever done this. You feel really bad the next day.
Yeah, I've done it a couple times, and I was like, no, no, this is
It's
worse. It's
not
kind of
recommended. Don't do it, people.
yeah, don't do it, don't do it.
Dustin, thank you so much for hanging out with me. We talked
Yeah,
about
man.
life. We
Uh,
talked about metal, the heavy metal history of me joining Cryptopsy
yes,
and everything else. This has been a blast. We're gonna keep hanging out, people, but not with you listening.
that's right.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. Oh, I already drank.